Since it's creation versus evolution, so you both kind of have an affirmative. Who wants to start? Any specific?
I'll say what I always say. It doesn't matter to me. We can flip a coin or whatever.
You want to flip a? Flip a debit card since I don't really have coins on me. Heads or tails?
Bankrupt.
How did you know? All right, I just flipped it. Heads or tails?
Tails.
Heads. So I guess it's up to you, TJump.
I vote Donnie goes first. I'll take the third.
All right, I'll go first. I'll introduce the topic, the debaters, all the fun stuff, and then we'll. So if you're going third, okay, then TRock goes, and then TJump. That'll give you time to finish. Is it pizza again, TJump?
No.
Pasta dinner? What was that? It just looked like a plate of cheese.
Pasta with Parmesan and shrimp.
So that's how you stay looking like the Rock, eh?
Yeah. It's a nice mug. It's too small, but it's nice.
All right. Well, I think everything looks good. I'll fix my hair a little bit. Okay. Let's see. You double streaming TJump?
Yep, we're live.
Way to give us a warning. We could have said something that
you were away.
Just kidding. I don't mind. Okay, gentlemen, sit back, relax. TJump, you finish that protein-filled pasta, and TRock, you take a 2-minute nap. And let me get your graphic up there. There you go. TJump, look at those pearly whites.
Photoshop.
And TRock, you look so intimidating. You look like the mean one for this one. It's supposed to be TJump.
I've heard that a lot. I don't have much of a sense of humor, so people say that all the time.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going on mute in 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. We are live. Welcome, everybody, to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie B., and I am your host and moderator for tonight's much-anticipated debate between TRock and TJump. Battle of the T's tonight. Two seasoned debaters duking it out, with TJump increasing his power levels already with that beautiful-looking shrimp pasta dinner. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here and giving us your time for this epic showdown. What's going on, gents?
Nothing. Potato.
Nothing
Good
at all.
evening, everybody.
Living the dream. Another day in paradise. Well, gentlemen, why don't we kind of break the ice, get to know you guys a little bit before we get into the opening statements. TRock, let's start with you. TRock, how you been? A little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
I've been good. Things slowed down for me a lot since the summer heat wave, so I have a little more free time here and there. Still have lots to do, but yeah, my position is young Earth creationist. I'm here to defend the literal history of Genesis and demonstrate to the audience that the biblical position is logical, sound. It's the most rational position to hold, and it's demonstrated by a high level of consistency in science and engineering and history and pretty much any venue you want to go into. So thank you to the audience for tuning in. Appreciate the support. Thank you, Donnie, for hosting us. Always do a really good job on production. And thank you, TJump, for joining the conversation.
TRock, I appreciate the introduction. I do have the relevant links posted in the description box for people to see more from TRock. So some of your past debates listed there, as well as TJump. TJump, thanks for being here. A little bit about yourself, a little bit about your channel.
Still selling bathtubs. I grow potatoes in the bathtubs now. It's much more profitable that way.
That's impressive. Hope you're selling lots of potato growing bathtubs. That's impressive. Okay, well, let's go over the format for tonight's debate. Specifically, we are debating creation versus evolution. So the good old classic creation evolution debate. Format, 12-minute opening statements, followed by 8-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. And then we're going to have a free-flowing discussion where the debaters, TRock, TJump, will be discussing points related to the topic. Then a 5-minute concluding statement. And then, as always, this is where we get you guys in the audience involved. We're going to have roughly a 25-minute audience Q&A. Just make sure you're tagging me with your questions at Standing for Truth, and that way I won't miss them. All right, well, with that out of the way, we're going to hand it over to TRock. TRock, whenever you're ready, you've got 12 minutes for an opening statement. And let me get the timer ready. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Donnie. I'm sharing screen.
Looks good, TRock.
Okay. Put this on full screen real quick. Okay. As always, my intro, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. If evolutionists use good arguments, they would be creationists. Again, not a knock on evolutionists. It's just not a very good position to hold. Okay, I don't have near as many slides as normal. Hopefully I'll be able to get through these. What I want to do is start at a high level, and then if we need to dig deep, that's fine too. So with that, I want to point out the important differences between creation and evolution. What you see highlighted in red is what I will say is kind of mutually exclusive to that particular paradigm. So creation is purposeful, it's intentional. Rapid processes, max 6 to 10,000 years, separate ancestry, basic body plans don't change. Evolution, quite the opposite in almost every respect. There is no direction. Everything's random. There are very slow processes. and 4.5 billion and 13.8 billion years respectively for the Earth and the universe. And then of course they consign to universal common ancestry. Drastic body plan changes over time. So those things in red basically set each one apart from the other. And so it also indicates how any given individual is going to approach evidence and so forth, interpretation of evidence. Okay, some key points to ponder. Deep time can never be demonstrated. You can calculate it, you can show numbers, you can make estimations, you can make all kinds of suggestions about it, but you can never actually demonstrate deep time. Radical body plan changes over successive generations can never be demonstrated. You can see small changes such as, there's a number of them probably, but the bacteria comes to mind with the flagellum. In Linsky experiment, you can see some things where they make some basic changes, but the fundamental body plan itself does not change. And it can't be demonstrated, kind of ironically, if it could. And if somebody says, yes, we can, if it could, what it really demonstrates is that you don't need deep time to get radical body plan changes. Fundamentally, there is no technology that can ever be developed based on the exclusive characteristics of the evolutionary or deep time paradigm. So we can go back up one and just try to imagine what kind of technology are you going to develop that needs 4.5 billion years or even 10,000 years? The answer is none. It's completely useless to today's living population. Universal common ancestry, you can't develop any technology whatsoever that demonstrates that. And if you could, it basically is a demonstration of both intelligent design and processes. Drastic body plan changes over time. You can't demonstrate that in any meaningful way without, again, basically just showing that intelligent design is required and deep time is not required. So we'll talk about converging lines of evidence and the differences between the two positions. Creation timeline is based on independent methods that aren't calibrated against each other. That's very important. And that word independent is kind of the key here. Cold subducted slabs, referring to subduction zones into the mantle. Earth's magnetic field decline, ocean salinity, lunar recession, population metrics, dinosaur soft tissue, presence of carbon-14. Each one of these can be basically treated completely independent of the other, and they all converge on limits to how much time could have passed since the beginning of the so-called evolutionary process. Compare that to the evolution timeline. It's based on dependent methods that are calibrated against each other. So carbon-14. And I've tried to list these roughly in the order of the way they're typically used, basically going from most recent history to most distant history in the past. But carbon-14 for very, very recent history, it's fairly well understood that carbon-14 is decently reliable up to, 4,000 or 5,000 years or so. And when you get beyond that, you start having to reach out to other methods. Obviously, when you get up to the 50, 60,000 year range, carbon-14 completely falls off the radar and you have to start with something else entirely. Oxygen isotopes, kind of the same thing. It's got this prescribed range that it's good for. What it's not good for is very, very short term, very, very short term dating, and it's not good for very long term dating either, as in tens of millions, hundreds of millions of years. As far as I know, it's really restricted to tens of thousands of years. VARV's kind of in the same class as oxygen isotopes. Ice cores, sort of the same. You could argue that somebody is using them, beyond several tens of thousands of years, but it's still the same basic idea. Radiometric dating, non-biological, not counting carbon-14 here. So you've got a variety of methods: potassium, argon, lead, rubidium, strontium, whatever. Each one of them slots into a specific range that they're used for. But they also all have failure points and all have to be compared to something else to understand the quote unquote validity of them, of any given result that you get from a lab test. And then of course there's geology, which as far as I know, geology actually goes into dating beyond what any current radiometric methods do. I'm willing to be proven wrong on that. I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure that is the case, is that geology is kind of the reference point for extremely deep time, even where the Earth is concerned. Okay, creation versus evolution, design in nature. The big question everybody has to ask when you're comparing these two paradigms is why homologies? If it's designed, why would they be similar in any way? I think this graphic here kind of says it all. Look to the left here, and you see homologous structures across a wide variety of animal life, including people. So you got penguins, alligators, bats, human again, cat, whale, bat. But the reason is right here, it's migration. There are design principles that work, and there are design ideas that don't work. So in modern human history, we've developed automobiles with wheels. We've developed, trains, even airplanes have wheels. Just about any vehicle that travels outside pretty much has wheels. There are obviously a few exceptions, things that go on the water, for example, and then there are things like hovercrafts and whatnot. But the wheel is the most versatile, allowing you to go the most places. But it is far, far, far inferior to the multi-digit extremities that are found in mammals in particular. So I'm going to kind of restrict it to mammals, or I'll say not necessarily mammals, but land animals, because with this basic design of having spreadable fingers, having a flexible wrist, having an elbow joint, so on and so forth, all the way up to the shoulder, to get this much flexibility out of any one of these animals or people, gives you the ability to go into the mountaintops, go into the slopes, go amongst the trees, even climb the trees for most of them, not necessarily all of them, walk across rocks, sand, ice. You can see what I've listed here: mountains, valleys, caves, rivers, rocks, sand, trees, mud, lakes, oceans, gravel, inclines, cliffs, you name it. This design works so that land animals can migrate the entire planet where they're suitable to go. There are restrictions for any one animal type, of course, so you don't necessarily expect like a white-tailed deer to go into the deep snow of Alaska or something like that. But everything has its limitations on what it can do and can't do. But the greater point here is that you must have this type of structure. If you tried to have such a thing as a biological entity that had something like a wheel on it, it would not be able to go hardly any of these places. It would be extremely limited. So if an evolutionist can come up with an idea for how to derive locomotion that is so versatile without design, I'd love to hear about it. And why DNA similarities if designed? Well, it's because we all share a common food source. The idea here is that every one of these creatures you see here, people, deer, raccoon, even fish, can eat this stuff. Plant life is basically the common food source. So, of course, in the creation paradigm, plants were created first because they are the food supply, and plants reproduce exponentially faster than any animals do. And so what do these plants provide every one of us, regardless of what life form you are as far as a land animal? They do the same thing for all of our hair, our nails, our skin, our teeth, our blood, our nerves, our muscle, our cartilage, all of our major tissues get the same basic benefit out of this. So when you put the need for the chemical, I'll call it chemical enhancement of biological organisms together with their need to migrate, you get obvious sign of very high level integration in design. So I think I'm going to close with that. I've probably got a few more minutes left, but that will be the gist of my approach. And like I said, if TJump wants to go deeper into some specific subject, I'll be happy to do that too. So I yield my time.
All right. Thank you very much, TRock. That was pretty much 12 minutes. So all worked out nicely. TJump. Now we're going to hand it over to you whenever you're ready. You have up to 12 minutes. Floor is yours.
Cool. You play the video again? It's in the chat.
No, you can play it from your end. I'm doing things on my end.
Play it from my end. Let's see. I don't even see you guys anymore. Oh yeah, you made me full screen. Gotcha. How do I share screen? Here it is, share screen.
Come on, TJump. Do we really got to sit through the same video? I'm not allowing you to play a video. You're gonna have to do your own.
Nope.
Or I'll shut this debate down because I'm putting my foot. Listen, we're not coming into debates for you to just play the same video that you played last time.
That's the evidence. So
if you want, you can. No. If you want, you can just skip your opening. You want to skip your opening?
Nope. I want to play the video because that's good evidence.
No, you're not playing the video. You're not
playing the video. I'm playing the video.
No, you're not playing the video.
Playing the video.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
I'm putting my foot down.
Yep. Playing the video. It's got to happen.
You could put the video in the.
I mean, if you want to forfeit the debate, that's fine. But if you're like just not going to let the opponent play the evidence, like.
Well, I think it's a silly way to debate. But if you want to, TRock, it's up to you. It's your debate. If you want TJump to have another lazy opening statement because. TJump probably can't understand, 90% of the words Jackson Wheat's putting forth in his video. So it's up to you, TRock. You want TJump to play a video for his opening?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not typically. I'm super easy to going on just about everything. I think you know that, Donnie. But I really don't like the video openings. The whole idea is that somebody.
I can leave. I don't care. Like if you guys don't want to look at the evidence because you're biased, that's up to you. But hey.
No, I mean share the evidence, but I want you to share
the evidence, TJump. I mean, why are you so lazy?
That's what the video does. So play the video.
So what lines of evidence does the video play?
You'll see it if
Chromosome
you play the video.
fusion.
Play the video.
Tiktaalik, Archaeopteryx.
So if you're not going to take my evidence, I'm just going to leave because this is just a waste of my time. If you're not going to take the evidence I'm providing.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm a busy man. I got a lot to do.
Okay, so if you're done, then good. Play the video or I'm out.
It's up to T. It's up to T.
Play the video or I'm out. Just tell me what to do.
It's up to TRock.
To do.
I'll tell you what. Let's compromise. TJump. Do 3 minutes of your video and then you do your own presentation.
Nope.
Of whatever.
I'm not compromising. I let you have 12 minutes of all your nonsense. So I get that. I get 12 minutes of actual science from an actual scientist.
Oh, Jackson Wheat's an actual scientist?
Yes.
Okay. So what's his PhD in?
You don't need a PhD to be a scientist. There's lots of scientists that don't have PhDs.
Okay, so I'm a scientist.
He has a degree.
TRock's a scientist.
No, you guys are not scientists. You guys are creationists. So you can play the video. You can play the video or not. So I just
any scientist who believes that they're related to a pine tree is not impressive to me.
So
I'll play the video, but I will say that everybody in the chat is anti the video.
Well, you're a creationist.
You're in the minority here, but we'll play the video. But it's just not looking good for you.
Can I ask real quick? Is this the same video?
Especially if you want to be taken seriously.
Exact.
But I will say this. I will say this. You're playing the video on your end. You're not coming in here and making me as host play the video. TJump. Okay, I don't know what kind of show you think I'm running here, but listen, you ain't a tough guy. You ain't intimidating by any means. Okay, so if you want to play a video, play it from your end, and I'll share your screen. Go ahead. Sure. Sound good?
Sure. Is that right?
Go ahead.
That's right.
Anything of your own words, sir?
Yeah, I mean
Or
that one
wrap
video
it there?
debunks all of creationism. It's just here's evidence from evolution making novel predictions, and therefore you lose. It's that simple. One model makes novel predictions that are successful, and the other one doesn't. Game over, bro. Game over.
All right. Well, very entertaining and original opening statement. I do appreciate it. TJump, I do appreciate all the work, effort, time, and energy put into that opening statement. So
Hey,
it's why we pay you the big bucks. Why we pay you the big
it's
bucks.
true.
Okay.
It's
So
true.
now we're moving into 8-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. TRock, we'll start with your 8-minute rebuttal. And then I'll make sure to, I see Jackson Wheat backstage, so I'll make sure to bring him in for his 8-minute rebuttal. So TRock, whenever you're ready, floor is
Give
yours.
me
Go
1
ahead.
second. I've got to do something real quick. It won't take but a second.
Nope. No worries. Okay. As TRock is doing that, I will remind everybody this is another debate marathon week. So tomorrow we will be back here at 9 o'clock. Charles Jennings and Merritt, who goes by Crimson Air on YouTube, they'll be debating soteriology, free grace versus conditional security, 2 Peter 2:20. What is the proper exegesis of 2 Peter 2:20? Then the very next day, we'll have a debate between CJ Cox and David Preston. They'll be debating are modern English translations dangerous and trustworthy. So stay tuned. Lots more exciting debates coming your way. TRock is back. So TRock, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Donnie. I think that entire video can basically be debunked in just a few words, so to speak. So I'm probably not going to use anywhere near 8 minutes here, but essentially, I kind of pointed this out earlier in my presentation. In order for you to consider any one prediction, and I'm speaking whether we're talking evolution or creation, it does not matter. For you to make predictions that are relevant to this conversation, you need to use the principles that are exclusive to your paradigm. So, and that is exactly what that video did not do. It used a whole bunch of principles that actually cross the lines between both paradigms. And so let me share my screen real quick so I can give, yeah, there we go. So I basically just scratched down some notes that were brought up there, and I'm probably not going to have to go past the first three to make this point. But the very first one that he talked about predictions was the moth and the flower with the longer proboscis that could reach down to the bottom of the flower. That is absolutely a prediction that can easily be made by creation. That's kind of what the whole point in this and this is that there is adaptability that's not mutually exclusive to evolution. There are changes in basic form, but not body plan, so to speak. So you don't need evolution to make a prediction about a moth and a flower. It's basically just a regulatory gene probably that extended the length of the proboscis, and you don't need deep time either. Birds and fused fingers, same thing. That is really highlighted here. Again, whenever you're designing locomotion for living organisms, you need something that can basically inhabit every environment. So obviously fish don't swim on land, and people don't go into the depths of the ocean. Nevertheless, what fish do have enables them to navigate a wide variety of water settings, and what people and raccoons and deer and all the other land animals have let them traverse a wide variety of land settings. So anyway, the point is there is a very smooth gradient across all of the different terrains that animal life has to inhabit. So it is easily predictable that you can find some living organism that can traverse just about any environment. So obviously fish don't swim on land, and nevertheless, what fish do have enables them to navigate a wide variety of water settings, and what people and raccoons and deer and all the other land animals have let them traverse a wide variety of land settings. So anyway, the point is there is a very smooth gradient across all of the different terrains that animal life has to inhabit. So it is easily predictable that you can find some living organism that can traverse just about any thing on the Earth. So again, no deep time needed, and the principles that make that prediction are equally available to the creationists. So basically, that entire video was just a I don't know exactly which logical fallacy best lies, but it was basically something like a genetic fallacy where they're assuming that their predictions are unique to evolution when they're not. Almost every single thing that was mentioned can be derived from young Earth position, no deep time, and built-in design variability. So I'm going to yield my time with that.
All right, short and sweet. TRock, let me check the. Okay, between 3 and 4 minutes. So anything not used, we can throw into the open discussion. So TJump, we're going to hand it over to you for your rebuttal. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I don't think he understands how science or evidence works. Nobody thinks that predictions are mutually exclusive, that only one thing can make a prediction. Literally, in science, there's called a problem of underdetermination, which means infinitely many hypotheses can explain all predictions. It doesn't need to be exclusive to one hypothesis to be evidence. It's just not how it works. The fact that creationism didn't make any of these predictions is why it's not evidence of creationism. The fact that you can say I can post hoc make them is like a kid watching a basketball star do like a dunk from the 3-point line and saying, I can do that. Like, no, you can't, kid. You think you can. If you can, go do it. Stop telling us you can. Start making novel testable predictions. But creationists don't do that. It doesn't happen. The only people doing that is the real scientists. The scientists are doing these, which is why there are dozens of examples like Jackson Reek provided. Creationists don't provide any. They just say, oh, I can ad hoc do that too. But they can't because their model doesn't make predictions.
All right. Another short.
I don't know why I thought it was a genetic fallacy. A genetic fallacy is a fallacy of origins. I don't know why he said genetic fallacy. There's not a genetic fallacy. There's nothing. The origin makes no difference to that argument. Not a genetic fallacy.
All right, TRock, TJump, with all the fun aspects of this, I'm sure, debate to remember out of the way, we're going to get into some discussion. So here we go. Floor is now opened. TJump just ended with his rebuttal. So TRock, why don't we let you pick the first topic, ask the first question, however you want to proceed. Floor is yours, gentlemen. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we could go a number of directions here. We just got done talking about predictions. Yes, I do perfectly understand both scientific method and what the logical implications of trying to make predictions in a certain manner are. The idea that there are infinitely many hypotheses basically just sounds like you've got an unfalsifiable paradigm.
Oh my God.
But having said that, I have a quick question for you. Can you give a prediction of the evolutionary paradigm that specifically uses the ideas that I mentioned early in my PowerPoint of things that are exclusive to evolution that do not pertain to the creation position at all?
So clearly you don't understand the scientific method. So the problem of underdetermination isn't about a theory. It means that there are infinitely many theories that can all explain any data always, no matter what. It's logically impossible to give like a piece of data that couldn't be explained by a different hypothesis. No matter what you give, any data you always see will always be able to be explained by a different hypothesis. So if you're asking me, can I present a piece of data that can only be explained by one hypothesis? No, that's literally a logical contradiction. You can't do that. It's a square circle. So the problem of underdetermination states any data can be explained by infinitely many hypotheses. Creationism, old Earth, creationism, the Big Bang hypothesis. They can all explain all of the data. Like, for example, an alien kidnapped us all, put our brain in a vat, and the world was created 5 minutes ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 10,000, or 1 billion. You can explain all the data with that. So the fact that the data can be explained by multiple hypotheses literally doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It has nothing to do with the scientific method. It's completely irrelevant.
Okay, so you're saying the young Earth creation position is as valid as any other position out there?
No, I'm saying any position.
You said infinitely many number of hypotheses.
Right. So infinitely many.
Except the YEC position.
No, including the YEC position. Any hypothesis can post hoc explain the data. They can all do that. Anybody can do that. That's not evidence of anything. The evidence is being able to predict it before we know.
I'm going to say that just sounds like philosophical wandering, because you can basically, like you just did earlier, make up a story and say, oh, see, I've got a good explanation.
Yes, that's what young Earth creationism is. But so I agree with you. Just being able to make up a story post hoc isn't evidence. Anybody can do that. Everybody can do that.
Okay, I'm going to completely disagree with all that, but let's try some of that out a little bit.
What do you mean you disagree with that? What, like, that's literally the scientific method 101.
I'm disagreeing with the application of it, so we're going to try some
application of. I don't understand what you're saying. Application
of the philosophy that you just espoused.
That anybody can post hoc explain anything. That's not evidence.
No, we're going to actually try some explanations.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you're objecting to here. So I said anybody can take any data and post hoc explain it into a hypothesis, and you're disagreeing with that?
So that means, so again, it's philosophical wondering, because you could say the exact same thing about the Big Bang, about evolution.
Yes, I literally am. I'm saying
so it can basically fall into the same trap.
Every hypothesis.
It is
everyone
just some made up hypothesis.
Right. So anyone can look at data and make it fit their hypothesis. Everybody. Big Bang, young Earth creationism, magical leprechaun part of the universe, everybody. That's why post hoc evidence isn't evidence.
So let's try that.
Try what?
What do you say?
I guess so. I'm still trying to follow what you're disagreeing with here. I don't understand what you're disagreeing with.
Well, I think it'll best be explained by some examples here. So you made the claim earlier that creationism does not make the types of predictions that were in the video that you played, right?
Well, it didn't. It did not make those predictions. Evolution made those predictions.
Okay, but you specifically said that evolution, or that the creation position does not make predictions, useful predictions like that.
Right.
Okay. You sure about that?
Yep.
Okay. I kind of doubt it, but so are you familiar with who Russell Humphreys is?
Yes, he's a creationist.
So are you familiar with his prediction about the magnetic field in Saturn?
In Saturn? No.
Exactly. That's kind of my point.
Okay.
Specifically what happened was Russell Humphreys is a physicist, of course, and he had worked for, I don't remember who it was, Goddard Space Center, one of those high-level outfits. And so he made a prediction based specifically on text from Genesis plus the 6,000-year timeline that's assigned most frequently to the young Earth position. And so, long story short, is he crunched some very standard physics formulas. He said, okay, Saturn is 6,000 years old. It has XYZ mass. This is what the magnetic field strength should be. Okay, so simultaneously, the secular scientists that he worked with made their own predictions. I'm saying simultaneously. They may have had them in place before Humphreys put his work together. But anyway, the point is there was an accepted calculation for that magnetic strength of Saturn before an actual space shuttle took a trip out into deep space, did a flyby. They were able to measure the magnetic field strength, and Humphreys was accurate within about roughly 3 times what the actual reading was. But the secular scientists were off by several orders of magnitude, as in like 3 or 4 or 5 orders of magnitude. That were.
Oops.
Makes an accurate prediction, the other one flops considerably. And each one of those, they're using numbers exclusive to their paradigm, which was my point from the beginning about why that video really is not.
Okay, what was the prediction?
What
was the prediction?
I just told you. the actual field strength of Saturn. What is it? That's what he predicted. He calculated it, said it should fall in this range. The secular scientists made their own calculations, and they said, no, it should fall in this range. They did a flyby.
Right, so I'm asking you to explain. So, for example, predicting in evolution, one of the things was the double-hinted jaw joint. They said if evolution is true, then we would see that the double hinge was evolved from the single hinge, and we'd see a progression of fossils that had one with the double hinge to the one with the single hinge. And if it happened over millions of years, we see them in separate locations across geological scales, and we found them exactly in that location. So explain to me how you get from creationism to magnetic field of Saturn has this much power.
Okay, so you kind of said it for me. You said that this prediction about the double hinge jaw joint happened over how many years?
Millions.
Exactly. That's the point. So I'm going back to
how does Robert Humphreys make a prediction that if the universe was young Earth creation, that Saturn's magnetic field will have a power of X?
Okay, again, like I said, the thing that separates YEC from evolution is deep time. So we're independently checking a time scale as an independent test to see if that much time has passed. If a test can be performed that demonstrates that that much time has not passed, it makes the entire idea of anything evolving over millions of years completely bogus.
Okay, the question is why would Saturn have this magnetic field of this strength if the universe was 6,000 years old? How do you get from the conclusion it's 6,000 years old, therefore it has this strength? That's what I'm asking for.
So how do you make that calculation?
Sure, I guess. Like how do you get to the conclusion that because of the age of the universe, the magnetic strength is going to be X?
Well, again, this is what I was pointing out earlier, things that are very unique to the YEC paradigm. And I did not list it here, but one of the things very unique to the YEC paradigm is the biblical text. And so what Russell Humphreys did was he read the text, and it says that the earth was formed in water and out of water. So specifically what he did was he set up a mathematical model where he said that you have X amount of mass that is actually surrounded by water. What he did was he showed through standard physics that when you have all of the hydrogen bonds aligned and then you suddenly flip them, you induce a certain amount of magnetic field strength by doing so. And so it's mass dependent plus water dependent. It's not one or the other, it's both together. And so he took that plus the limitation on time and said, okay, if Saturn was formed in this way using water and it has the known mass, and you start out with all of the hydrogen bonds aligned in a certain direction, and you suddenly flip them or scramble them, you should get XYZ field strength at the point of creation. And then after 6,000 years passes, you have an exponential decay curve of magnetic degeneration. And since only 6,000 years has passed, he used that specifically as the stop point and said, okay, by that starting point at creation, using water with XYZ field strength, 6,000 years, the decay curve of magnetic fields is well understood. We can measure other planetary bodies, the Earth, whatever. So anyway, he makes this prediction, and when they do the flyby, he is very, very accurate, whereas the evolutionary paradigm that did not start with water and does not use 6,000 years as a limitation, he comes up with almost identical to what the actual field strength is. So that's relevant.
So that doesn't answer the question.
When you try to apply deep time, where do you get it from? That's the big question for everyone. Where do you get the deep time from?
So again, you're not answering the question. The question is how did he get to the conclusion that the number, whatever it is, of the magnetic strength of Saturn would be exactly that from the Bible? You're saying he does some magic with some numbers and poof, he gets it. Doesn't help me at all. So I need to be
That's
like,
not what I told you pretty specifically for a layman. I told you pretty specifically.
You didn't tell me anything. You said he read the Bible and he said based on mass and that was formed in water, that it has
No,
some magnetic strength. Where does it say what the mass of
that's not what I
Saturn
said.
is?
I said the world was formed in water and out of water. So
What does this have to do with Saturn?
in the evolutionary paradigm, the Earth was not formed in water and out of water.
What does this have to do with Saturn?
Because that you have to have the water to know how to calculate the field strength starting point.
Of Saturn. How do we get world formed in water to Saturn?
Because
does this calculation apply to every planet? Does every planet have the same?
Yes, actually it does. And so that's one of the other points is he used this exact same method and used it on Neptune, Mars, the Earth, and a couple other places, and basically used the same formula and said, okay, if you start with water with any one of these planetary bodies,
what does that
and you
mean?
allow 6,000 years with the given mass, this is what the field strength should be.
What is that?
And he was accurate.
What does it mean? You start with water and then poof planet. I don't understand. Start with water, poof planet, then gravitation, then electromagnetic field of strength X. I'm not getting the connection here.
Okay. Well, again, it's about the hydrogen alignment. You have to start with X amount of mass of water, and you have to start with hydrogen alignment.
What? Like, where does it say the X amount of mass of water that the universe started with? Is that in the Bible somewhere?
Let me ask you a better question. Excuse me, I need to get a drink. What do you think the likelihood of going to the big biblical text, starting with water, taking the known mass, taking the known decay curve for magnetism in planetary bodies, and putting it together and accurately predicting something would be?
Very low. Not quite as low as predicting the age of the Earth in Hinduism, but maybe a quarter of that.
So can you show me anywhere at all that you can demonstrate reasonable assumption of deep time?
I don't know what that has to do with the previous question. So do people make predictions with equally as much probability as that all the time? Yes. Hindus predicted the age of the Earth, 4.3 billion, within 5% accuracy. It's far better than what you just predicted about the range of magnetic fields because it started in water, which makes no sense at all. Like, you need to actually explain how you get from hypothesis.
Well, I'm not a physicist, so I'll just have to refer you to Russell Humphrey. But
right, I'm not asking for a specific mathematical equation here. I don't need the specific mathematical equation. What I need is a logic tree that shows from this fact we can get to this fact by using this fact. Like, evolution is very easy. Evolution is change in gradual change over time. Like, that's pretty easy. And so if gradual change over time happens and evolution is true, then you'll see transitions from a previous form to a new form. So like, we'll see a double-hinted jaw joint come from a single-hinted jaw joint, or vice versa. Or we'll see...
I'm going to say you have not actually seen that. I'm going to say what you've actually done is dug up fossils in a variety of locations and inferred that.
Not saying I've seen it. The point of this is to explain clearly how you get from hypothesis to expected result. That's what I'm trying to understand here, is how you or Robert Humphreys gets from hypothesis, Earth creationism, to expected results, magnetic field of Saturn. That's the part I'm missing. So in evolution, it's easy to understand that. You can cognitively imagine in your head, if evolution is true, gradual change happens. Gradual change goes from one form to another. And so the fact that there's a double-hinted jaw joint here and a single-hinted jaw joint here makes perfect sense because there's gradual change. It's very, very easy to understand how the argument works in a structure. Yours makes no sense. You're just saying creationism, therefore magnetic field. But I need the middle part there of how you get from creationism to gravitational field. Or electromagnetic field.
I think I explained it really well. You start with the mass. You start with the given mass.
What do you mean? So like we look at the mass of Saturn using actual real science, not creationist science, and then we start with that, which has nothing to do with the Bible, and then what?
So you take the known mass of Saturn
Gotcha.
by observation and gravitational calculation.
Yep.
Take the known mass of Saturn.
Yep.
You assume it started out as a body of water.
What do you mean? So literally 100% of Saturn was that mass and water?
I think Russell Humphreys would have to clarify that point, but I did get that impression, yes.
Okay, so it's made of water, just an entire body of water.
Yes, obviously very different than the secular paradigm.
What's next in the logic tree? What's next?
But with that body of water, the assumption is that if you want, okay, so there's a couple kind of fine points for the actual science itself. In hydrogen, in water, if the hydrogen bonds are aligned, the way I was describing earlier, there's no magnetic field. But all water has a very weak magnetic field because all water is moving, its temperature is above 0 Kelvin, blah, blah, blah. So the atoms are moving, so the bonds can't be perfectly aligned anymore. But point is, on the one hand, perfectly aligned means no magnetic field, but all existing water in the form of water has a very weak magnetic field. So what you do is you take everything perfectly aligned and suddenly flip the poles on it or flip the alignment on it, and you induce a magnetic field. This is well understood science. There's nothing.
Well, the part I'm missing here is like
about that.
So the water planet Saturn, how does it get a magnetic field? Is from what generates the magnetic field in Saturn? Because it's not water.
The de-alignment of the hydrogen bonds. I've said that several times.
Okay, so there's water, and now all of the water is gone.
I didn't say that.
What?
Where did you get that from?
You're saying Saturn has water?
What do you mean by gone?
Yeah, there's no more water on Saturn. It's not, if it was a planet of water at one point and now there's no liquid water.
Oh, I'm not implying it's covered in water or anything else. What I'm implying is that the body that is Saturn started out as water with perfectly aligned hydrogen bonds. Now, what happened to the water, I don't know, but I did not claim that it all just went away. That's not even the point anyway. The point is that when you go through this physics exercise, you literally induce a field strength of a known magnitude that's based on the volume. So it's volume dependent.
Okay, but
because it's volume dependent, you can calculate a more or less an exact magnitude.
Magnetic fields are generated by metal, big things of iron, liquid iron rubbing together generates magnetic fields, not water.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back and look in some actual scientific literature because water does have a very weak magnetic field.
The magnetic field in Saturn is caused by the iron, the metal. Like Saturn's magnetic field is generated by the fluid motions of the electric conducting portions of the interior that measures. This region is in which hydrogen exists is a fluid metallic state around a central rocky core comprised of the inner half of planets.
I'm not contesting that point because it's not relevant. You could not use that information, what you just said, you could not use the current composition of Saturn and that's kind of the whole point here. You cannot use the current composition of Saturn, backdrive it to 4.5 billion years roughly, whenever Saturn supposedly formed, and then calculate the current magnetic strength.
Well, I never said you could.
And that's the whole point, is they tried that and it did not work.
I never said you could. So I'm asking, how did he go from it's made of water to now it's made of metal, and the water created a magnetic field, which can then be, I don't know, patterned out in some kind of a pattern that leads to its current metallic electromagnetic field, which has nothing to do with water. And so it seems like, let's say if I made a prediction that Saturn has an electromagnetic field of X, and I'm right, but I said it's also made of cheese. That's wrong. Well, then the prediction is wrong. It is a wrong prediction. So if his prediction is somehow it started as water and then converted to something that said nothing, not at all water, his prediction is wrong. Just like if I said Saturn was made of cheese.
No, because the other key difference that I did not mention here is that in the YEC paradigm, we have a miracle worker, and so. Pay real close attention because this is an important part of
magic.
it.
So magic.
Personally, for me, whenever I have these discussions, I am not going to invoke a miracle unless the Bible actually gives warrant to do so. And the Bible specifically says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the heaven and the earth. And then it goes on to say day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Day 4, all the stars, which includes the planetary bodies, are created on day 4, just 3 days after the earth. Okay, so
was this something Robert said? Like, so Saturn starts as water, magic, it turns into metal and creates an electromagnetic force, and he's predicting the relationship between the initial water starting condition plus the magic to be able to conclude that it has this exact magnetic field?
Well, so no, I mean that's a good question. The thing about iron is virtually all iron has a magnetic field as well, too, right?
Sure.
But what's the magnetic field strength of a chunk of iron floating in space at 3 degrees Kelvin?
Negligible, nothing. As long as this is
Exactly. So where did Saturn get any of its iron from?
gravity causing it to like be crushed. So the gravity causes it to be crushed together into a liquid because it's hot and melts and moves. And
Now, see, here's where you're going to need a miracle, but you don't have one because you have no miracle worker. Because planets, I understand that the paradigm is that there was this debris disk floating around the sun, and then you get some coalescence, right?
That's how planets form. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You get some coalescence. Eventually, things start kind of coming together to form what they call planetesimals, pre-planetary bodies, right?
Yeah, gravity's the thing. Yes.
Has anybody ever seen anything like that happen in space?
Yes, we literally watch it all the time through telescopes.
Where at?
The Kuiper Belt, we can see things get merged together all the time from those. We can watch.
I'm going to say no because I've read enough astronomy to know that you don't actually see most of what you try to look at out there. It's a very, very difficult to look at.
We see things smashed together. Yes, we see a lot of things smashed together. We see things smashed on the moon together, right?
I'm gonna call major bluff on that because if we did see such a thing, we would certainly have live videos of it.
They're called meteorites. Yes, we do.
Do they form planetesimals when they smash together?
They add mass, yes. So things hit other things, and then the mass is added, and then other things.
And they also take away mass.
What? So you think that every collision must subtract mass?
I didn't say that.
So some
are
of
you
them,
saying every collision builds mass?
Yes.
No.
I mean, I think literally they have to. Like literally, every collision is going to cause
collisions ricochet. Some collisions ricochet. Some collisions hit, ricochet, and basically eject more mass than what the initial impacting body had.
Right, but they still add mass to one or the other because it's going to get ejected and then fall back
Sometimes
in.
They just fly apart.
And then fall back together eventually because gravity is a thing.
That's another major problem with the evolutionary paradigm.
So let's say collisions at a low enough speed will clearly combine, right? Like if we drop two objects, they fall together.
That's one of the problems is the low enough speed.
Like
where do heavy elements come from?
Heavy
elements above
supernovas.
Lithium.
What does this have to do with supernovas? What does this have to do with the topic?
Well, you keep talking like you understand planetary formation, but you got to get the dirt from somewhere, right?
The dirt.
The
heavy
rocks,
elements. You mentioned heavy elements. Heavy elements are a result of supernovas in stars, which I don't know what that has to do with anything we were just talking about. But my argument was that rocks hit, and if they hit at a low enough speed, they connect and grow. They
hypothetically
bigger.
That can happen. I'm not saying it can't. That's not the point.
And there's lots of them all over the place, like the Kuiper Belt, a bunch of rocks of all kinds of sizes, and they tend to be getting bigger because they combine.
So I see your hands waving.
Yes.
I think that's kind of what you're doing here is giving a hand wavy.
Yeah, because it's so insanely just basic and easy to understand that yes, rocks hit and combine, and this is a thing, and we see it in space.
I'm not arguing that they don't.
Okay.
What I'm saying is,
well, isn't that I thought that's what you were arguing because you're saying that
you're not seeing when you talked about the Kuiper Belt. What you're not seeing is actual planetary bodies form.
I'm not in.
You might see a couple random collisions. I kind of doubt that too, though, because deep space is kind of dark, and I seriously doubt you're seeing very much outside of our solar system.
I'm not following your logic here. So rocks combine and they get bigger, and you're saying they're just not going to get to the size of planetoids or something? Like if they're going to combine,
well, I think you have to back it up a little bit. You have to have a mechanism to have rocks moving slow enough so that they don't destroy each other when they do collide.
Like in the Kuiper Belt, they're all moving relatively the same speed.
But But why are they moving at that speed? That's kind of the
Gravity.
point. This is kind of like a root cause analysis where you start at point A and go back and say, why did that happen? Why did that happen?
First problem is you have to get them at the right speed. Well, they are at the right speed. At the Kuiper Belt, they are at the right speed.
How did they get that way?
What does that matter to your
My
first
point
objection?
is that the evolutionary paradigm can't explain how they got to that speed.
Gravity is how they did that. It's very easy to explain that. I don't understand the problem.
That's not how gravity works.
So large, massive objects exert force on other objects, and if they're traveling next to it, it gets pulled together, slowing it down.
No, you just took a giant leap forward past a whole bunch of necessary steps. Is my point.
What? Gravity slows. What steps am I skipping when I say gravity slows stuff down?
Humor me for a second and let me kind of step you through it as quick as I can, then I'll let you respond. Okay, star explodes. Heavy elements come from that, right?
Sure.
Okay. How fast are the projectiles moving from an exploding star?
All different speeds.
Like, by and large, the vast majority of the mass is moving at a very, very high speed, well above what any planet in our solar system is currently moving.
Sure.
Like orders of magnitude. So,
sure.
Very first star explodes. What slows any of the projectiles down?
Other stars.
TRock, before you continue, maybe just another minute of this topic, and then why don't we shift to, because I know there were just so many good points, that could be discussed, and you guys may have been discussing this one for a while, but that's also kind of what the audience is pointing out. So,
okay,
you guys want to maybe another minute of this, and then redirect to another topic.
Fair enough. I'll wrap up my explanation real quick. You got a star exploding. You got debris flying through space. Yes. Stars are not going to slow it down the way you think it is. Either they're going to impact sucked in by the gravity and get burned up and not become a planet, or
wait, that's slowing it down.
In most cases, they're going to miss the star completely. Or if they can be influenced by the star's gravity, chances are they're moving so fast and they're not close enough anyway that it's basically going to change the projected path that they're on, but it's not actually going to capture anything. Because if it does get close enough to capture, it's going to be whizzing around that star super, super fast, and the actual linear velocity is not going to be decreased significantly at all. So
we can literally see this.
Physics tells you,
like, we can literally see supernovas happen in space, and we can see that when the supernova happens, the debris is curved by a galaxy, other stars nearby. The gravity pulls it into the other galaxy. Like, it's not going past. The vast majority is going into the other galaxy, into a nice little ring formation on the edge of it.
So are you telling us that you've actually seen some of this debris captured in the orbit of a star?
We see that's lots of examples of that, literally from Hubble and the new one.
Yeah,
probably.
I think not. I think you're going to have to actually bring that evidence that you saw debris captured in the orbital path of a star.
Oh, okay.
Of a star, not a galaxy, a star.
Wait, galaxies are just a bunch of stars. Why is that a problem?
Because planets form around stars, not galaxies.
What? So star explodes, sends matter in all directions, and that matter has to be slowed down by something. There's other matter in the form of other stars and other rocks, planets, white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, and they pull on that stuff to slow it down. And it gets pulled into the galaxy, which is just a collection of a whole bunch of that stuff. And it slows it down enough so that it gets trapped in the galaxy. I'm not sure what the problem is here. Me saying it's a star rather than a bunch of stars isn't a difference.
You keep saying slowing down, but I'm trying to explain to you that it's not slowing down the way you think it is. What? As a matter of fact, a large star, if some piece of debris is flying by very fast, what that star is actually going to do is speed it up. And all you're going to do is change the direction, and you're not going to meaningfully decelerate the actual linear velocity of the star.
In order for gravitational acceleration to work, it has to go through a very precise angle through the gravitational field. Of all of the different degrees it could go through, it's incredibly small percentage will actually get sped up. The vast majority will get slowed down in any direction. Like 99.999% of it all going to get slowed down.
Okay, well, the vast majority is going to miss the stars completely because in the early universe there weren't that many stars to begin with. So anyway, let's move on. Let's go look at some other ideas where you think you can see deep time, specifically here on Earth.
Do you have any other predictions
in
that we can talk about?
in the geological column where evolution takes place? So can you point out to me where you can verify deep time happens in the supposed geologic column?
What? Well, I wrote a picture for you. Stars exploding in dusty galaxies, and we can see them. There you go. And so we can actually see the picture of the dust from a supernova, and it's being curved for some reason. Explosions don't curve, which must mean I'm right, doesn't it?
No, because you missed one of the key ingredients. I told you it quite plainly that a star can change the trajectory path. That's a no-brainer. Obviously,
Okay.
things fly by the Earth, and that happens all the time. There's nowhere near the mass of the star. That's not the only mechanism you need. You need more than just change the trajectory.
If it can curve it like 45 degrees and still be trapped inside the rotation of the galaxy, that's stopping it. That is so much that it's going to fall back in on itself. That is a stopping.
No, it's not. Everything's flying apart. The moon is literally separating itself from the Earth, and the Earth is separating itself and drifting apart. They don't drift together, they drift apart. We've got a pretty strong gravitational pull between the Earth and the sun, and we're not getting closer to it.
Actually, I think we are, but it's a different topic. No. It's irrelevant.
Okay, so geologic column. Where do you see deep time in the geologic column that alludes to the idea that the fossil transitions that you mentioned are actually the result of a lot of time?
Where do I see deep time in the geological column? The amount of time it takes for sedimentary layers to form. Like we can just, and there's lots of sedimentary layers, so we just count them like tree rings.
Really? So if you see sandstone, for example, let's say it's 30 meters thick. What's the deposition rate?
I have no idea.
Okay. Let's say it's 30 meters thick and it's deemed to be, I don't know, 100,000 years old. What's the deposition rate?
What does it have to do with the topic?
Well, I mean, you don't have to give me a number, but it could be calculated hypothetically, right?
Sure.
Because what you're saying is you're getting a very slow, continuous deposition of the exact same material over hundreds of thousands of years. I'm not sure how that works either, because that's not anything anybody has ever observed in real time or could observe.
What are you saying doesn't make sense there?
Well, I'm just pointing out it does not make sense that you would have, let's say, 5,000 square miles of sandstone and it's all the same material, and it just kept depositing the same sandstone year after year after year for 100,000 years and never got anything else
right. That wouldn't make any sense. We literally know that there are gravitation or like volcanic eruptions that leave sedimentary layers that we can literally see. Here's where a difference happened.
So where's the erosion?
What erosion?
Exactly.
Erosion is a process of water. So water hits something and erodes something. So if there's no water, there's going to be no erosion.
But with slow and gradual deposition, certainly you have weather going on the planet that is going to erode while the deposition is happening, no?
Sure. What is that?
Okay,
like it's not going to erode an entire layer of an entire continent.
That's not what I'm getting at.
I'm not sure what you're getting
say that, but let's take a cross section of part of the geologic column where you've got, these 30 meters of, which is really, really thin layer compared to a lot of strata. But anyway, 30 meters, you got a cross section of it, pure sandstone. If it was really laid down very gradualistically over 100,000 years, why isn't there any erosion in the midst of that cross section?
I don't know.
Why isn't there any apparent?
Well, erosion is stuff that won't be there. So erosion is cutting stuff away. And so if there's like a layer of sand and you cut away a layer of sand, then it's not there anymore. And a different layer of sand will go on top of it, and you won't see the layer of sand that is missing because it's not there.
Okay, that's great. But now you're implying that 5,000 square miles and erosion always just made a perfect shear off the top, like a planer on a board or something.
I don't know what you're arguing. I have no idea what you're arguing right now.
You just said that.
So if there's erosion, that means something's gone. It's taken away. So why don't we see something not there? Because it's not there.
And to get no apparent erosion, what erosion actually does is cuts crevices and channels and things.
Right, and we see those.
It does not just shear off the top and leave no evidence that
Right,
erosion
like when a
happened.
river, when it goes through something, it erodes it in a big
Exactly.
line, and we see that. That's what the Grand Canyon is.
Why do you have 5,000 square miles anywhere in the world
Because there was
of
no
pure
river there.
sandstone with no rivers in it?
Because
The
rivers.
Grand Canyon does. Yes, the Grand Canyon has a big
Yes.
slice carved through it from
Rivers
water
don't
erosion.
cover the majority of the planet, so most of the planet won't be covered in rivers.
So
Like
in 100,000 years,
most,
not
like,
that
so
I'm
just
asking
to like
for a
take
river to
the
be
Grand
formed,
Canyon.
but if any rainfall at all had happened, there should be some sort of channeling erosion, however thin it might be. You should distinctly see
No.
these crevices where erosion has cut, however shallow they might be. You should see a little bit of water erosion from even minimal rainfall, and then more layered on top of that, and then that should follow the previous curve, and then maybe erosion in a different place dips into it slightly.
Erosion happens over a long period of time, not a day of rainfall. A day of rainfall isn't going to cause erosion on geological timescales of sandstone that are 30 meters deep. I have no idea what you're even saying. Like, in order to cause erosion that is noticeable, it would take months of constant rainfall going in the same direction in the same place, which is river. And we do see that at rivers. Where there aren't rivers, we won't see that because there isn't enough water in that one location to erode the matter in that location and leave a mark.
So one of my favorite examples of this is a map I brought up in one of my previous debates of the U.S. It's an elevation map, is all it really is, but it shows that like the western half of the U.S. is on average at a significantly higher elevation than the eastern half of the U.S. Now, what's interesting to me about that is that you're kind of just throwing erosion out there and saying, "Oh, erosion removes stuff." Well, obviously, it does, but there's a specific geometry you get from annual rainfall erosion, and there's a specific geometry you get from trade winds erosion too. Neither of those are apparent in many meters of sandstone deposits across the world, but
because they aren't everywhere. So
in this,
I don't understand
in this U.S. elevation map that I'm talking about, you've got places at ground level, thousands of feet above sea level, where there is supposedly, there are dinosaur fossils found, but they're found at ground level, and they're a couple thousand feet above sea level. Now, what's the problem is, if they're dinosaurs at all, they're at least 65 million years old,
so is your argument that you must see erosion in every rock layer, or it's fake?
I'm saying, well, there is actually, yes, because there's a very specific reason for that too, and it has to do with lunar recession.
What?
Yeah.
Why would you need to see erosion in literally every rock layer?
Because the further you dial back the clock, the closer the moon is to the Earth, and the heavier the gravitational pull, the higher the tides, the stronger the trade winds, the strong, everything just increases in magnitude as the moon approaches the Earth. All you're doing is accelerating erosion going backwards in time. So 100 million years ago, the moon was way too close. And by way too close,
What does it have to do
even
with
10%.
seeing geological erosion in sandstone?
Huh?
What does the moon's distance have anything to do with seeing geological erosion in every layer of sandstone in the world? I'm not following your logic here.
I just told you you've heard of the inverse square law, I'm sure.
Like the distance, the rate the moon is receding. What does this have to do with like?
That's not the rate the moon is receding. It's the inverse square law. They're two different things.
I'm trying to understand which has to do with what in the argument. You're saying the moon is receding, so it has.
And I'm trying to tell you, but you're going to have to listen for a second, because the moon, if it's 10% closer, take the inverse square of 0.9, and you can calculate what the actual percentage increase in gravity is. 10% is too much. So the moon is currently some 240,000 miles away from the Earth, so 10% would be 24,000 miles, and so 216,000 miles from the Earth. It's still way out there, but at that 10% decrease in distance, you literally get some 23% increase in the gravitational pull, which seriously accelerates the erosion rates on Earth because of what the moon does to the tides.
On the rivers, not on everywhere.
No, everywhere. The moon literally lifts dry ground. Sorry, it does. The moon literally lifts dry grounds. It moves water. It moves the ocean. The moon pretty much stirs everything.
Well, the moon can bend the planet a bit. It doesn't like literally lift a layer to cause erosion of that layer. It's not like we're going to select the top layer and move this one layer a bit because moon. No.
Okay, but think about what you just said.
Yeah. Moon bends planet. Yes.
Okay. So 65 million years times 12 lunar cycles for any one point on the planet, you're literally flexing the ground up and down,
all of it,
by several feet, actually, in some places, depending on how rigid the terrain is,
Right.
but it can literally flex the ground up and down 65 times 12 million times, and you're saying we shouldn't see any signs
It's moving the whole planet.
Perfectly homogeneous all the time.
The layers form on the top. So if it's bent up and then bends down and the layer forms, and then it's bent up and bends down, the layer forms, they're going to look the same.
It bends up and it bends down, and it rains even a few inches a year.
What is the rain? Rain wouldn't make a difference here. There's no.
Rain makes a big difference.
To the rivers where the erosion takes place.
Rain does not only happen where there are rivers.
In order to make a
rain causes erosion where there are not rivers.
Sedimentary living? Sedimentary. What does that mean?
So let's switch gears again.
What does a sedimentary layer, like dirt isn't a sedimentary layer? If we look at the dirt on our lawns, is that going to form a sandstone layer? Are we going to see the little worm trails in my yard out front in the sandstone layer? Is that going to be there?
To answer your first question, does dirt form sandstone? Obviously not. You have to have water, like a global flood or a local flood.
Ask the second question. The dirt we see, there's water and dirt in my front yard. Is that going to form a layer that we're going to see in the geological timescale? The dirt in my front yard. Are we going to see the worms and the rain erosion in my front yard in these like geological timescales? In these layers?
Well, if you have millions of years, that brings up a whole other point. Where's all the perturbation of the soil? Where's all the paleo soil at?
How does the layer form? Like what causes it to remain there and turn into a giant rock? Because there's clearly a difference between dirt and rock, right? They're not the same thing. What's the difference between dirt and rock? How does
organic
the dirt
soil
become rock?
Organic soil is most commonly from plants breaking down inorganic particles like dust and clay and stuff like that. So plants break that down, turn it into organic soil, so you get a difference in the soil, but ultimately it comes from inorganic material. So like plants have the ability to leach minerals out of solid concrete or rocks or just about anything on the ground. Plants have the ability to leach that material out, so you can get organic soils out of that. But where did the sandstone come from? Sandstone came from water transportation.
So like, when we see a layer, if we go to the Grand Canyon, we see a layer. How much of the dirt outside will it take to make one of those layers? How many yards, miles of dirt outside will it take to make one of those layers?
None. Dirt doesn't make that type of layer.
Whatever material you want. Like so you're saying there's like a ground layer, right? And that ground layer is going to have to accumulate, and then it gets compressed and dried and forced into a giant rock, right? It's one solid rock. It's not like it's dirt anymore. It's not like it's sand anymore. It's a rock.
No, most of the sand in the world comes from eroding solid rock. From
oh my God. I'm asking about the layers. There's not sand. The layers in the Grand Canyon are not made of sand. They are made of rock, right?
Okay.
But they weren't rock initially. When they were on the top, they weren't rock. It wasn't a rock. It wasn't one solid rock when the sedimentary layer formed, was it? It was sediment.
You've got this very foggy starting point. What are you starting with? The layers that you see in the Grand Canyon are quite obviously
the process to turn sediment into solid rock is going to eliminate any of the minor deviations you're going to see from worms or tiny little amounts of rain creating like a millimeter of like erosion.
But it sounds like what you're imagining. It sounds like what you're imagining is a solid pile of loose rock or a solid pile of loose sediment that hardens over time. Right?
So the process to make it from soil, from topsoil to a sedimentary rock Yeah, it's going to harden it. It's going to crush it. It's going to solidify it into a giant rock when it wasn't a giant rock. It was sand. Sand can turn into a sedimentary layer. Ash can turn into a sedimentary layer. It didn't start as a giant rock. The ash from the volcano wasn't a solid rock. Now it is a solid rock. So it went from a non-solid state to a solid state.
Okay. But
and there's a
the
process.
sandstone
It's
itself,
hard. It's hard to do that. Like compressing a bunch of ash to a solid rock is hard, right? It takes a lot of energy to do that.
takes a lot of pressure, probably.
Yes, and that pressure is going to eliminate all of the little tiny deviations. Like if a worm crawled through it, you're not going to see that, right? If the rain fell and created like a little,
that's obviously bogus because we've got lots of soft-bodied fossils or fossil remnants that come out of some of these layers.
Does that mean we're going to see literally every one of them? Do you think we see every one of them?
These layers that you're talking
No,
about,
every worm, every
fossils.
little worm trail. Do we see every little worm trail, or is it like very rare that we see those?
It's rare because the process that you described did not happen.
What? So, okay, so the process is lots of pressure, right? There's lots of pressure that crushes these layers.
No, the process you said was very slow deposition. That's not a lot of pressure.
That's the start. It doesn't go from very slow deposition to solid rock.
How many thousands of millions of years?
This is not hard. This is not hard. The process to turn like topsoil into a sedimentary layer takes lots of pressure, lots of time, and it crushes any small deviations. You're not going to see little small deviations except in rare cases where we're very, very lucky. It's just ridiculous
what's hard
to expect.
About it is you're jumping
your
right
argument
past
was so
necessary
dumb.
Mechanisms.
You said that every single inch of every single place of the planet layers would see erosion, which is stupid. It's like saying we're going to see...
I did not say that's not exactly what I said.
Okay.
Erosion in general is it's all but absent from a hundreds of millions of years timeline. It's all but absent. There's like very little evidence of erosion over long periods of time, even very slow erosion.
Except for like rivers and the Grand Canyon, where there's lots of evidence of it. So erosion is a weak force. Yes. It takes lots of energy to make any significant change. Like a worm, erosion makes less impact on the dirt on the ground than a worm does. We don't see worm trails because the process to create the layers crushes any of that kind of tiny detail that we would see there, except in extremely rare cases. So the fact that we don't see this extremely tiny detail in the vast majority of places makes perfect sense. Your argument is dumb.
No, you kind of missed the point where you started out talking about this very slow deposition rate,
which had literally that's how they start.
Worm. So here you've got this worm in the ground. He's dead.
What?
Very slow deposition over the top of him. He doesn't have any pressure on him. There's no pressure there. He's got literally, in your paradigm, tens of thousands of years with very minimal pressure and plenty of time to fossilize. And so you're kind of bypassing that step, and you went from, we get this very slow deposition to all of a sudden we've got tons and tons of pressure from thousands of feet of rock, or however you want to describe it. But you're literally jumping off of one
literally
onto a
none of that is an objection to my argument.
In between them.
Literally none of that is an objection to my argument. So if a worm dies, the bacteria in it's going to decay it, and so none of it's going to be left in there anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point. It takes a very special process to make a fossil, doesn't it?
Yes, which is why it's so rare. And the process in order to make
rapid deposition.
Sure, rapid deposition. Yes,
which is the opposite of what you described as very slow, gradual.
I'm talking about the layers in geology, not rapid deposition. The layers in geology isn't rapid deposition. Those form over hundreds of thousands of years. That's not rapid. That's the opposite of rapid.
How did you get the fossil?
What? I'm not talking about
get the fossil.
I'm not talking about fossil. I'm talking about the geological layers, the layers in the Grand Canyon. Every layer. Those are not fossils. Those are not like fast deposition of things in one location. That's a bunch of time building top ground soil and turning it into a giant solid rock at the bottom. It's not the same as a fossil.
So far, you've said that organisms in the ground don't fossilize very often. They take a special process to fossilize.
That's true.
Very slow. You've also said very slow and gradual deposition
for geological scales, which have nothing to do with fossils.
Okay, but the fossils have to exist inside of a finite period of time.
What? That's literally nothing to do with anything I've said.
You literally do not have a mechanism to create fossils except rapid deposition.
Okay.
And rapid deposition is the opposite of what you're subscribing to build these layers.
So the argument you started with was we don't see erosion in geological layers. That's what you said, right? Geological layers are not sudden deposition, right? Those are separate things. Geological layers are very slow. It takes a long time for them to form. Hundreds of thousands of years for each layer. Layers take
so
a
anything that
long
deposits,
time.
even anything that deposits quickly is not a geological
No,
deposition.
those would be too, but the things we're talking about is why don't we see erosion in every single geological pattern in the planet? Because they take a long time to form, and that long process of being frictioned together to form a solid rock is going to eliminate any small details, like if a worm happened to dig through it, that's going to be gone.
Going to be gone, just magically gone.
Because of pressure and the process it takes to make those layers in the first place.
Because you jumped from where he was there in the ground to all of a sudden, poof, a whole bunch of pressure and he's gone. There's a process in between there. There's a process in between.
Shit.
And so what I'm trying to get you to see is that in your model, you practically have no weather patterns. It's very slow. Erosional rates will still create some erosional remnants in solid rock or otherwise. And so you're literally jumping from, I got a fossil and no evidence left behind because all of a sudden it's just crushed under, tens of millions of tons of rock.
I already explained this. I've explained this. Like so like a 4-year-old could understand. It's not hard.
You literally bypass the most important steps.
No.
So that's kind of the crux of the whole evolution versus creation is you can't account for the deep time period, because when you try and calculate magnetic field strength of an external planet, or you try and calculate what the gravitational pull of the moon is X number of years in the past, or if you try and calculate erosional rates, it almost doesn't. There are so many different things. If you try to apply deep time, you run into so many conundrums. You can't explain any of them.
You've provided no conundrums. You've just said you don't understand how erosion, little tiny things of erosion aren't seen on layers that take hundreds of thousands of years to form. Like, oh my God, erosion that happened like once or twice a week. What didn't show up on a time scale of hundreds of thousands of years? Oh no.
And how do you get any fossils?
Because they are sudden. We do see erosion in places that are very sudden. That happens.
So how about ocean salinity?
The salt level of the ocean?
Yeah.
What about it?
So the salinity of the ocean increases over time.
Sure.
If you try and wind the clock back at the known rates of the salinity increases, you run into this problem where you've because you're winding the clock back, that means that the salinity decreases as you go back in time. You can't go back in time 65 million years and get and arrive at any logical conclusion about
because the rate wasn't constant. So problem solved.
Give me 1 second, please. I'm gonna have to take a quick break.
Okay.
You know what? That'll be a good time to wrap it up, anyways, because looking at the clock, we went about 10 minutes over, anyways. Good discussion, gentlemen. Ended up being entertaining, anyways. So appreciate it. We do have some questions, and we can just move into closing statements. And it'll be TRock who goes first, but since he's going to be MIA for a minute here, I'll just go over some announcements in terms of debates coming up. So actually, firstly, thank you so much for all the super stickers, super chats that have come in showing support and love. I do appreciate you guys are the life and blood of this channel. If you want to send in any last minute questions, you can do so right now. And okay, few debates coming up. Ken Hovind, Jay Bundy at the end of the month, Evolution on Trial. This will be Kent's 300th debate, and Jay Bundy's an evolutionary biologist. This one should be a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to this one. And as I reminded everybody earlier, we do have debates coming up in the next couple nights. So this one, 2 Peter 2:20. This will be a soteriology related debate. So Charles Jennings and Merritt. And at the end of the month, another soteriology related debate. This one specifically on James 2. So we got some more specific debates on some of these more controversial verses. This will be Charles Jennings, David Preston, both well-educated individuals on this topic. We got Matt Slick coming back here in a week or so. He'll be debating Stanley Terry. Was Jesus fully God and fully man during his earthly ministry? And then in 2 days, we've actually got a few Bible translation debates coming up for you in the next month. This one will be CJ Cox and David Preston. First week or so of September. This is just a snapshot of the overall content. So just make sure to, check the event section. So it's either the first or second week of September. We're going to,
Which position is David taking on that one?
David is taking the King James position. And then CJ
Which one's the King James position? I'm not a theist.
Oh, okay. He's taking a King James only position.
So it's trustworthy. Our modern English translation is dangerous, and he's saying it's trustworthy.
Right. So he's saying
CJ is saying it's untrustworthy.
Yeah, CJ would be considered more so. And CJ, if you're in the chat, sorry if I misrepresent your position. He's KJV preferred. So he does like the King James, but he's okay with the modern English translations. Where David would say, the modern translations, the ESV, the NIV, the SUV, kidding about the last one, are untrustworthy, essentially. So a couple debates on that topic coming up. Will Kinney versus Mark Gageton will be debating that same topic in September. This one, end of the month, CJ Cox again. This will be conditional immortality and eternal conscious torment. TJump, didn't you have a discussion recently with CJ Cox?
Yes.
Or was that Nicholas Whip? Okay.
We did one on morality.
Right. Okay.
Who is Turrenton fan? Is that a YouTube name?
Turretin fan. Yeah, he's he goes by, I think his name on YouTube is a pseudo name, but he goes by Francis Turretin on YouTube and in his blog, or Turretin fan. So he'll be taking the eternal conscious torment position. CJ Cox will be taking the conditional immortality position. And looking forward to this one. So Robertson Jennis, Steve Christie, they'll be debating. This will be in October, though. So this is a little ways away. They'll be debating Protestant versus Catholic, the Marian dogmas debate. TJump, you've had a discussion with Robertson Jennis as well, I believe, right?
Hilarious.
Who haven't you had a discussion?
Who is Steve Christie? What is his background?
He's a Protestant, former Catholic. He has a YouTube channel called Born Again RN. And I believe he's Reformed, but he's had quite a few debates. He's debated Trent Horn, who runs the Catholic Answers, I think, website and podcast. So it should be a good debate. Looks like TRock is back now just in time. So TJump, TRock, interesting discussion. Thank you both, gentlemen. Very lively at times, and I guess we're going to go into some closing statements. So things all right. TRock, we'll give you both 5 minutes. TRock, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going into dark mode here just because I'm trying to kind of keep things quiet around here. It's starting to get kind of where everybody's going to bed. But anyway, so basically what I'm trying to point out here for the audience's sake is that there are things exclusive to the evolutionary paradigm. There are things exclusive to the young earth creation paradigm. They are non-overlapping. Those are the criteria that would create the litmus test for whether the ability to make predictions is actually meaningful. So in the video, the very first example brought out, of course, was a moth and a flower, the infamous deal about the elongated proboscis that can reach down to the bottom of a flower that was discovered first. You need none of the tenets that are exclusive to evolution to predict such things. The claim is not that a creationist in particular predicted that. That's not the point. The point is, did you predict it with things that are exclusive to your paradigm? And so conversely, I was pointing out that, the magnetic field calculations that are done using standard physics equations very accurately predicted the magnetic field strength of Saturn using both biblical information and known physics and the highly limiting factor of a 6,000 year timeline, and made a very accurate prediction. You cannot import any of the tenets that are exclusive to evolution into those equations or that exercise and get the correct answer. So that's basically the root of all of the evolutionary paradigm. Has to do with time. Now, we could talk about the fossils, and I was trying to kind of demonstrate the same thing with the geologic column. Go take a cross section of a geologic column and then say that the layers are deposited very slowly, one at a time. That does not lend itself at all to fossilization of anything. TJump pretty much said that, bacteria will eat up the whatever, organism is there. It's going to be eaten up and gone. Obviously, you have to have a rapid process to do that. But much of the geologic column is actually, we talk about overlapping, or we talk about polystrate fossils. Of course, evolutionists hate that word. They don't like it. It's not an evolutionary term. They call it a creationist term. I think it's a really solid argument to show that the layers are not depositing slowly, but I think there's an even stronger argument than that, and that is overlapping fossils that continuously overlap, one here, one here, one here, and they share space between these layers that supposedly deposited at a very slow rate, but yet the fossils are occupy the entire strata from top to bottom and have a high degree of overlap from top to bottom. Nothing about deep time, the exclusive piece of the evolutionary paradigm, suggests that that's a reasonable thing to get out of many millions of years worth of passing. So again, that whole video on trying to make predictions did not do any of the exercises that demonstrate the exclusivity of evolution in its paradigm to be able to generate those predictions. So on the creation side, I did indeed provide some pretty good rationale for how it is that we have homologies in the first place as a design criteria. It has to match the terrain. It has to match the food supply. If you take the 5-digit extremities, for example, away from a whole lot of mammals, what are they going to navigate the planet with? If you randomly scramble them, I'm not sure exactly what the typical evolutionist is looking for in terms of what they think constitutes a design, but someone needs to explain to me, what exactly do you expect to see for land-based locomotion if creation is true? What do you expect to see for a food supply if creation is true? And how would you apply that food supply to actually nourish living organisms? And so I think evolution is completely without a rational explanation for how that's supposed to happen in a truly created world, which is part of a major tenet of refuting the creation position. So I'm going to yield my time there.
All right. Thank you, TRock. And now we're moving to TJump for your concluding statement. Go ahead.
I think he just said that creationism doesn't have an explanation for how a created thing would do all of that. I think he meant evolution. But anyway, his rebuttal is just wrong. He's saying that in order for something to count as evidence in a novel prediction, it must not be able to be post hoc explained by a different hypothesis, which is just a misunderstanding of science. That's literally wrong. No one cares if you can post hoc it. Everyone can post hoc it. You can say a leprechaun farted out the universe 5 seconds ago and gave you all of your memories, and so all of your memories of what happened in your past are perfectly explainable by a leprechaun farting out the universe 5 minutes ago. The fact that you can explain all of the data post hoc in any hypothesis doesn't mean it's not evidence for a different hypothesis. Whichever one can make the novel predictions about the future and get it right is the one that gets the evidence. It doesn't matter if you can try to post hoc explain the actual evidence into your hypothesis. Everybody can do that. It's not evidence. So I just don't think he understands basic science there. I'll conclude there.
All right, there we go. That concludes the concluding statements from TRock and TJump, Battle of the T's tonight, creation versus evolution. So, all right, let's get right into the audience questions. And again, if you guys want some input or add a few points to each question, that's fine. We'll just make sure whoever the question is for gets the last word. So okay, here we go. Question for both. Sean Mock, he asks, under your paradigm or model, how long does it take bones to mineralize into fossils? Since TJump, I guess, just ended with his concluding statement, why don't we start with you, TRock? Just make sure to unmute yourself. You're good to go.
Okay. No, good question. But there is one little bit excessive generalization here. It's not. There's not one answer to it. Is the point here? So if you're an evolutionist, maybe they have a prescribed amount of time. I'm not sure, but in most cases, they either have to switch gears and flip to a rapid process, or they end up with some obvious conundrums about how fossils form. And I think the vast majority of the time they just flip gears and say, oh, a rapid process did that. Okay, how long does it take? Well, it's highly dependent on the mineral content in the water, groundwater. Basically, what I'm assuming is that most fossilization happens from groundwater seepage at some fairly slow rate most of the time. But so the two main factors are, what's the mineral content of the water? How fast is it flowing? And then, of course, how exposed is the organism to things that degrade it rapidly? So the point is that in nature, yeah, it can take a little while, not tens of thousands of years. It can take probably years in some cases, or decades even. But in a lab, you can do it in minutes or hours at the very least. So it's a variable rate, and it's dependent on multiple factors, but none of those factors fit a deep time paradigm directly.
The minimum time for a fossil is 10,000 years. You can literally just Google it. How long does it take for something to be fossilized? The number is 10,000 years minimum.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your responses there. Okay, Mark Reed, he $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Mark. And he's coming at you, TRock. So he's asking you, TRock, why did you not present any evidence for the creationist model or address anything in TJump's intro?
Thank you for the question, Mark Reed, but it seems like you missed a significant portion of the debate. Basically, I was actually addressing TJump's introduction before he even gave it, because I was describing the differences between the two paradigms. And then after he gave it, I went back on my rebuttal and said, hey, look at the moth, look at the flower. What's the other examples that he gave?
Double-headed jaw joint.
Birds and fused fingers. I didn't get into every single one of them because they all share the same basic problem, is that they don't use mutually exclusive pieces of that paradigm. And so I stated very plainly that in the moth example, you're talking about simple regulatory genes that can influence the length of the proboscis, and it happens very quickly. It does not take millions of years. And that's a design characteristic specifically so that plant and animal life can inhabit the entirety of the planet and share a common food source.
Okay, thank you very much, TRock. Anything you want to add, TJump?
Well, he did. I mean, he presented what counts as an argument is just a rejection of basic science, that the problem of underdetermination isn't a thing, apparently. So, I mean, he did try to address the points in the opening.
All right, TRock, quick final word. Question was for you.
Yeah, that's not a rejection of science. It's a rejection of an interpretation of science, because nothing about nothing about a moth and a flower demonstrates that molecules became, or let me say it a different way, microbes eventually evolved over billions of years into people or deep time, either one. Nothing about those examples demonstrates either one of those tenets of evolution.
All right. Thank you, TRock, for the final word. And Mark Reed was coming at TRock, and now Felix Rodriguez is coming at TJump. So Felix asks, please ask TJump to show evidence for everything he just claimed on this show. So he's saying that you, I guess, put forth a majority or consensus fallacy. Go ahead, TJump.
Well, there's no such thing as a consensus fallacy. That doesn't exist. Appeal to a majority is of people who aren't experts, and all the things I said were consensus of experts. Appeal to authorities aren't fallacious if they're actual authorities. So none of that is. I mean, evidence for the claims. Oh, when I said he was rejecting science, I didn't mean about the moth. I meant about the problem of underdetermination. Saying that you need to make a prediction specific or to only one hypothesis is a rejection of science. Science does not make that claim ever under any circumstance because it's impossible to do that, like literally impossible to do that. I don't know, what other claims did I make? I don't know, not much. Rocks hit each other in space and gain mass. Like we can see that. It's not hard. I don't know. You want pictures? I got pictures.
All right. Thank you, TJump. Anything you want to add, TRock?
Yeah, just that I think he kind of missed the real point behind whether something, the whole point behind presenting a prediction is to show that only that paradigm can do that. Mm-hmm. And if you only make predictions that either one can, either paradigm can make, that's what we call non-discriminating evidence. It doesn't tell you which one is the more reasonable position. It does nothing whatsoever to delineate which one is the more reasonable position. And it does nothing to demonstrate that, obviously, just saying the same thing again, it does nothing to demonstrate the exclusive tenets of your of a particular position. So I mean, I can make similar types of predictions with creationism, and if I'm not using tenets exclusive to creation, I'm basically just saying, hey, the evidence is the evidence. You can interpret it either way. I'm not really sorting anything out at that point.
Okay, thank you. And TJump, you get the last word. Questions for you, if you want.
Yeah, like what he said there is that's the rejection of science I'm talking about. So we know for a fact that's wrong. Like when we were transitioning from Newtonian gravity to Einsteinian gravity, Einstein predicted the perihelion of Mercury. Newtonian gravity can post hoc explain that with a second planet, and they tried to do that, but it didn't matter because Einstein predicted the things before we knew them. Like he predicted the curvature of light around the sun accurately. The fact that you can explain that from the perspective of Newtonian gravity after it's discovered doesn't matter. Like no one cares. So his statement that it needs to be exclusive to your hypothesis is just wrong. Anybody can post hoc explain anything into their theory. That doesn't matter. It's just irrelevant. The fact that is does one hypothesis make novel predictions we don't know yet and get them right before we know it? That's evidence. It doesn't matter if another hypothesis can come along and make up a new explanation to try to explain the data into their model. He just doesn't understand basic science. Like there is no requirement that it must be exclusive to your model. It's not a thing.
All right, next question, TJump. This one came from your chat. So
cool.
There's a couple questions from your chat. This one's from John Rapp. John, thanks for the question. So he says, question for both. How do you explain the necessary time frame for a layer of 300 to 400 meters of limestone? Anybody want to volunteer in terms of answering first? Question was for both. So it's up to you guys.
I'm not sure I understand the question. How do you explain the necessary time frame? Like,
I guess he's saying, maybe from an old Earth position and a young Earth position, how do you explain the limestone? You know, which position is most compatible with the layers of limestone that we see? That's the best way I can interpret it. But what do you think, TRock?
I think you kind of said. I think what the question is getting at is, if you're an evolutionist, explain how X number of millions of years or whatever accounts for 300 to 400 meters. And if you're a creationist, how does a 4,400 year timeline explain that exact same feature? I think that's what he's asking.
So what? Say that again.
How as an evolutionist would you explain 300 to 400 meters of limestone over however many years you believe it should take?
So yeah,
form that.
calcium carbonate deposits from either evaporation or seashell animals. So I'd say that it's just millions and millions of years of evaporation, leaving carbon deposits, which then form into limestone in combination with seashells breaking down and forming limestone deposits.
All right, TRock, go ahead.
Sorry, it's the same thing. He gave an explanation, but he didn't basically say how time affected that in any way. Because the creationist explanation would be very similar. There are chemical processes that cause formation of limestone, and then there's also the pulverized material that you get from seashells and stuff like that. It's not a different explanation as far as where limestone comes from. How did it get that thick in that short of time specifically? Again, it's about processes. John Mackay likes to always point out it's not about time, it's about a process. It's just like how long does it take for something to fossilize? You have to assume a rate to calculate any amount of time, but the rates are all variable. They're always variable, especially over deep time. But in a young Earth creation perspective, chemical conditions would have been highly conducive to mass formation of from specifically from chemical formation as opposed to biological formation. But if you put the two together, because a lot of limestone actually does have a lot of fossils in it. So when you combine the two, you can get very rapid deposition because, again, it's about the process, not about some specific rate that you try to assign to it.
Okay, well, that was a question for both. You both got an answer, so let's move on. Next one comes in from Jungle Jargon. This one is for TJump. So I did a super chat asking TJump to explain the existence of matter and energy that cannot make or direct themselves.
I don't understand the question. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's the first law of thermodynamics. It's even like it wasn't created. So it exists like necessarily.
Matter and energy. Yeah, I maybe he's referring to that first law. Matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So how did it come about? I'm not sure. Jungle, if you wanted to elaborate in the chat, you could. Until then, we can move on if you would like to, gentlemen. Here's one from Stephen Tibbetts. Question for TJump. If geological layers form slowly and fossils need to get buried quickly, how did the fossils end up in the layers? Quick layers, question mark, slow burial, question mark.
Both. Like there's multiple ways fossils can form. It's just very rare. So quick coverings, like you mentioned, are one of the ways that most common ways for fossils to form. They can also get like covered in tar pits or whatever, and then those evaporate over time and dry out over time, leaving fossils. There's lots of different ways, but they're just very rare. So the geological layers can form around the fossils. The fossils can form independently of the layers in many ways. Like if an animal falls into a tar pit, it becomes a layer independent of the geological layer that forms around it.
All right, thank you. TRock, anything you'd like to add?
I think what Stephen Tibbetts is trying to point out here is the same thing I was trying to point out. It's kind of like you just have to randomly jump back and forth between mechanisms. When you look at fossil formation, it obviously has to be fast. You can't just throw something on the ground, walk away, and hope it's fossilized in 10,000 years, the minimum that TJump gave earlier. Things just don't happen that way. So you have to bury them quickly. But that was part of my point is most everything in the fossil record actually does get some kind of rapid burial assigned to it. Whether it was some kind of breach dam idea in the evolutionary paradigm, riverbank overflowed, whatever it is, they're very quick to throw rapid processes at fossils because of the obvious reasons. But even the layers that don't have fossils. So like, for instance, I want to say it's the, is it the Tapete sandstone in the Grand Canyon? It's mostly got footprints in it instead of hard-bodied fossils. When you look at those, the evolutionary paradigm says slow and gradual processes in a dry environment, which makes no sense whatsoever when you actually look at the details, because that same sandstone has mica in between the grains of sand that would not be there in a dry alien condition. So it's quite obvious, and this is something you can actually bench test to see the difference between what water does with mica and what wind does with the mica flakes. In water, they're preserved because there's enough lubricity between sand grains, but in an aeolian condition, they're not preserved. They just basically get ground into nothing. And so what's in the Tapete sandstone? A bunch of mica flakes that shouldn't be there if the evolutionary paradigm were true at all.
Okay, thank you, TRock. TJump, question was for you, so if you want the last word, you can certainly have it, unless you want to move on.
No, that's fine. Like, yeah, they mostly form from rapid processes. If they form from slow processes, we see a lot more fossils. They're pretty rare. Fossils are really, really rare. So yeah, it's most likely that it's from a process that is rare, like sudden encapsulation.
Okay, this one comes in from Redefine Living. Question 4, I am assuming you, TJump. So let's see. There is not enough erosion sediment on the ocean floor to represent the measurable amount of erosion over deep time. Where did it go?
That's what limestone is from erosion. So yeah, there is. What?
All right. TRock, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, the question doesn't specify limestone. It's just sediment in general, but it's the same basic problem that I was pointing out on land is also apparent in the ocean. Water currents in the ocean move very fast. What sediments are there? Because they move the way they do, basically the shoreline itself is receding all over the world. And this is another one of those kind of proxies for clocks you can use. It's quite obvious there's not enough time passed because there's not enough sediments to account for in the ocean floor.
Okay, thank you, TRock. And TJump, did you want a final word on that one?
Nope.
Okay, Jeremy Nolan has a question, and it's a question for TJump. He says, you said evolution is change over time. How is that novel when everyone knows this? Like the sun comes up.
So if it's predicting something we don't expect to see, like obviously if it predicts something we do expect, like the sun coming up, that wouldn't be evidence. So predicting a new thing, like a transitional fossil between a lizard and a fish, like Tiktaalik, something that creationists would not expect and think doesn't exist even after we found it, that would be novel and we discovered it. So it's predicting things that we haven't or don't expect. That's evidence, not just things we already know.
TRock?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously kind of generalizing a little bit there, and I mean, I'm not arguing against that or anything, but the change over time thing, I like to kind of relate this whole idea of change over time. It's absolutely not unique to evolution. Our bodies are what, 80+% water. Anything made of 80+% water is going to change over time, whether you're talking about the individual or across multiple generations. Chemistry, blah blah blah. Just about everything is going to change. So
literally everything.
Just calling evolution change over time is really, it's falling short of what they're really trying to do. And I mean, in some sense, it's a little bit dishonest because they have specific amounts of change that have to happen over specific periods of time.
Final word, TJump?
Well, yeah, that's why the predictions give a specific, like they'll be found in this layer and it will be above this layer and below this layer. So they're very, very specific.
All right, here we go. Next question comes in from TJump. This is from your chat again. So this one comes in from Mr. Monster as a super chat.
Oh, and thank you, by the way, for covering my chat too. Appreciate it.
No worries. No worries. So There you go, Mr. Monster, $5 super chat for TJump, and he is asking. So I guess I'm assuming this is going to be a question for the both of you. So do you think humans evolved from lesser mammals? So I'll assume that's TJump's position, or were created using magic out of dirt from the earth? So we'll consider it a question for both. Since the last one, TJump started, why don't we start with you, TRock? Go ahead.
So obviously I'm a creationist, but the whole magic idea to me is extremely disingenuous from the evolutionary camp. And the reason is because all forces in the universe are invisible. Every single force that can be described is only known by the effect it has, not by direct observation. So that idea that magic, in real terms, there is a personality behind it. You would, as an evolutionist, you would have no qualms whatsoever with somebody saying, what kind of personality do you have? The only way you can know that is by the way you act. I cannot see your personality. You have to behave a certain way. And so, throwing out, I guess, somewhat derogatory terms like this to try and make a point, it's really, really disingenuous. There are forces in the world. Where did your personality come from? Why don't rocks have personalities if naturalism is true? It's because they have no output. You have no way of seeing the effect of how they act because they can't. And so, maybe you have a problem with the idea that a personality is outside of space and time. I think that's a lot easier to digest than eternal energy and matter. It's obviously people, the philosophers and scientists alike realized hundreds of years ago that eternal energy, eternal worlds kind of thing doesn't make sense because you can't get to the point in time you're at now if the world was eternal. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, TRock. TJump, over to you.
Yeah, I think we evolved from animals, but magic is literally in the Bible. It's what the pharaohs, sorcerers used against Moses. Magic is literally a thing in the Bible. So it's not a straw man. It's a thing that's in Christianity.
Actually, I wouldn't normally, but I mean, you can respond after I get done. I wouldn't normally do this, but no, that is absolutely a straw man because the magic that the pharaohs committed is not what created the heavens and the earth, and it is expressly forbidden by God in the Bible.
But it exists. Magic is real.
Okay, but who in the Bible demonstrated the ability to create a planet using that same magic?
Well, it's not a straw man if it's a thing in Christianity. Like if we say a talking snake exists, that wouldn't be a straw man because it's actually in Christianity. We're not necessarily saying...
Actually, it's not. Can you show me in the Bible where there's a talking snake?
Talking donkey? Do you prefer that one?
Now that I can accept, there's no talking snake in the Bible.
Okay, talking donkey. We'll go with that one. But that's the point, is it's a thing in the Bible. It's not necessarily saying that particular thing was being used.
Okay, but you're
All right. Well, moving on. So logical, plausible, probable, and we'll start winding it down here. This one's a super chat from TJumps. TJump's chat. So John Maddox is putting TJump through university here, and LPP has also got a bunch of super chats on my end too. So John, you're putting my kids through university. So super chat. This one specifically from TJump's end. Come to the after show. So it looks like John's having an after show, and here it is again. After show will happen. Come share your thoughts. Who won? Who lost? Best comebacks and best zingers. Definitely some fun, memorable moments in this debate. And let's wind it down with this last super chat that comes in. $50 super chat. Jay, thank you so much. Jay actually gave two $50 super chats. So God bless. I appreciate the support. And this one's for you, TJump, it looks like. Speaking of prediction, the fairy tale of evolution predicted that we would find millions of partially or mostly formed organs, claws, heads, feet, so on and so forth. More of, I guess, a comment, but TJump, feel free to respond as you would like to.
Well, we did. We found, I don't know about not the soft tissue things, but the hard tissue things, we did find millions of those.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. Bubblegum says,
do you mind if I respond to that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you pop that back up?
Yes. There you go.
basically this highlights one of the points I would have liked to have gotten to. Time just flies by so quick. But anyway, part of the problem we should have gotten into this is stasis. What this is alluding to is the extreme stasis in the fossil record. Lobsters, crabs, tree leaves, ants, spiders, snakes, turtles, everything is, and fish, everything has such a high degree of stasis. It's easy to recognize, almost naming a specific currently existing species for some of these. And so it kind of points to the reality that in the fossil record, you can't predict extinction. And because you can't predict extinction, you can't predict arrival either. And so it's like always stasis. And without the soft parts, you only have a small percentage of your overall argument. You need soft parts, hard parts, you need behavior, and you need genetics. You need all of them combined. And the only thing you have is hard parts in stasis, mostly.
Okay, thank you, TRock. TJump, I guess the question was originally for you technically, so if you want a final word there, you can have it.
Yeah, you don't need any of that. You just need novel testable predictions. You can say, I have a hypothesis that evolution happened. If it did, we'd see this fossil in this layer, this fossil in this layer, and none in between, or not in the other order. That's all you need. You don't need soft tissue.
Bubblegum Gun really wants me to ask you, TJump. He put a super chat asking, do you have a degree in philosophy like Daniel?
No one should have a degree in philosophy like Daniel. Daniel is less qualified than anyone on Standing for Truth's channel. So props to SFT.
I'm guessing that's an insider of some kind between you and Bubblegum.
Daniel Hikikachu, I had a debate with him a few days ago.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay. Also, it looks like a couple just random super chats here. Cheers for the spanner. Nothing to say other than it's a great day. God bless. God bless you as well. Thank you so much. Mitchell says it's tea time with TRock, TJump, and SF coffee. Yes, I've had lots of coffee today for sure. So are you guys tea drinkers or coffee drinkers or both?
Both.
Both. What about you, TRock?
I'm heavy on the sweet Southern tea.
Sweet Southern tea. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. That wraps it up. Thank you to my audience as well as TJump's audience. Interesting discussion. Lots of fun. Thank you to the chat for all of your questions, input, engagement, and also, of course, the support with the super stickers, super chats, as we like to do before we completely wrap it up. Also, reminder, sorry, John, almost forgot. Don't miss the after show. It's going to be John's been doing after show marathon. So he had one last night and then the night before with the ERV debate between me and Luca. That one was a ton of fun. I think we went at it for 6 hours. I'm still exhausted from it. And then the night before that as well, which was at the moment, I can't remember what debate that was, but he's been doing lots of after shows. So that being said, final words, final thoughts from the debaters. Why don't we start with TJump?
Potato.
Thanks for doing this. Final words, final thoughts. You're good?
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Thanks, TRock, for joining. You're a pleasant guy. Nice to talk with us. Donnie's nice for the most part, occasionally. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the audience. Have a good night and good luck.
All right. Thank you. TRock, final words, final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the debate. It gets a little technical and a little deep sometimes. I sometimes wish we could cover more ground, and I know probably the audience is really interested in specifically the evolutionary details of plant and animal biology, that sort of thing. I wish we could cover some more of that sort of thing, but perhaps sometime in the future in another setting. But thank you to the audience for tuning in. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Donnie, as always, for putting this together. I really do think you guys do a phenomenal job with some of your content. And thank you, TJump, for joining the conversation.
All right. Thank you. TJump, TRock, Battle of the T's. All right. To the audience, thanks again. Standing for Truth is out.